Chapter 7. The True Human. There is a being ahead. It adheres to neither traditional masculinity nor femininity, an androgynous limbo holding a shard of glass whose edges sink into its soft palm. A Deleuzian fever dream, beautiful in its inherent animation, drenched in an unheard-of material that existed inside the wound of human identity. Silk skin, jaunty and abstract with sharp angles and graceful dictation through the space such a divine creature occupies. Like Narcissus, this purgatory of autonomy gazes at itself in blood-streaked glass, and it becomes clear to us. We have found the true human. God of texts and ideology defined itself as Alpha and Omega, omnipotent and omnipresent. But God is all man wants to be, and as such we have found God. It finally looks towards us, face refined to such a degree of geometrical perfection that the skin laying over it would dare not move, turning itself marble. Each frame of time this being occupies renders itself the magnus opus of human aesthetics. Shadows cast themselves in luxury with no better subject on earth to exist without light. Once the penultimate form of humankind is no longer, only I and Weiwu shall remain. And then I too shall succumb to the void, passing my story over to this parasite. I, an imperfect man, immoral and sadistic, a torturer and murderer, with evil that removed steps from the ascension up the ladder of good. I am at peace with this. Good and evil were concepts to justify emotion and control progression. They have no purpose in this null reality. I shall tell you the accumulation of my life parasite, and then we shall act against such a perfect specimen of all beauty was and is. Once that is over, you may leave my vessel and my existence and face the hive into the sunlight. There were no transcending beliefs that stemmed from my parents. They idolized only one thing, the sense of virtue that presented itself through hard work. They believed all that was worth knowing lay within the laborious hours of toil towards their daily goals. No dogmas other than an effort towards the institutes within which they existed as the drops of blood that formed a stream through the circulation system. They knew the jobs they dedicated the portion of their lives within which they had the most enthusiasm to experience, saw them as expendable. But this did not matter. I held no ill will towards the overwhelming mentality of contributing to the daily necessities of existing within a progressing society. Once a fellow worker at the factory, my father served as a technician for middle-range watch pieces, thrust upon him the idea of Marxism. He told my father the common sentiment of such thought. We work all day as an essential process of the mass production of these watches, yet most of us cannot even afford them. My father did not consider himself a proletariat, or the ones above him as bourgeois. He did not care for status or hierarchy, no matter how empirical monetary value made it seem. He existed to function, and his melody played on an instrument of assimilation to whatever church of capitalism he was subscribed to. He knew an end goal mattered little. Time would eventually melt all within the warmth of its palm. Such a thing is the cause for the word inevitable. Wittgenstein attributed symbols of language as purposeful structures to the overall creation. A bed consists of legs, a frame, a mattress, and maybe even a headboard. My father did not wish to be the bed, or even care if the bed was used. He merely wished to act as Atlas did, holding the weight of something that surpasses his own accumulation on his back in a seemingly infinite strain. It was not a celestial sky he held, or even the frame and mattress of a bed. His weight was the unexpelled energy at the end of the day. My mother held similar sentiments, but her work was more drenched in delusion. She would nod her head and agree that she was expendable, that she was not paid enough, and that her time could have been spent more pleasurably. She agreed to the rantings of the common kin, but she did not believe them. Her assimilation into the mass of hands that fiddled and rearranged innovations to be abused by the consumerist drunk soul was no more than a facade. She enjoyed the work and often inadvertently asked for overtime, so much so that they would often not even ask, instead adjusting the rota and informing her of such. She too held an inherent energy inside of her that could only find temporary satisfaction through its expulsion upon meaningless labor efforts. For them both, it was a catalyst to survive. And whilst they differed in the consensus of why they dedicated themselves so vigorously, it had the same result. None of this I begrudged them for. In fact, I admired it. I too would work hard for my own pleasure. Unfortunately, my work became that of foul absurdities. On the way home from school, I would often pass a church, something of an ornament to the village, serving no use, but its mere presence was necessary. Globalization became a hyper-rendition of what once notes passed between students of terrain, and soon our village became a town, and the church was renovated and put to purpose once again. Now I would hear voices of cocksure men proclaiming that God not only existed, but that punishment was on the cards for those who had not acknowledged such. I was interested. The punishment did not scare me, but I knew that something far beyond my capabilities could inflict a repercussion of similar proportions. This is when I heard of the eternal consequence, a realm of unfathomable torment propagated by a being so close to God that it acted as its antithesis, Satan, the binary to the Lord, the evil to good, the temptation to free will, the bourgeois of suffering. An inverted Marxism of sorts. The proletariat, instead of working for suffering they could not afford, were force-fed it by an endless worker of its production, Lucifer. As a morbid fascination grew, the ultimate aftermath of answering the most divine of questions wrong could not even be produced by God, but by a creation that sole purpose was to fill this gap. I knew that people bowed their heads in the hope of grace from the awful wisdom of a tyrannical deity that turned those who showed an ill will to stone. Sodom and Gomorrah showed me the wrath of this biblical protagonist, but even this vengeful entity would not commit immeasurable pain to so many. I leafed through Bibles from many derivatives, from the book of Job and the indignities he faced to settle a bet between good and evil, to Old Testament pestilences killing thousands due to the actions of one. I was baffled. What did this hell hold within it that even a violent omnipotence would not partake within? I had decided, due to the immense weight of my own faith in divinities of the time, that God's violence was calculated, measured, and a counteract to those who had attempted to demean what unbounded vigor he possessed. The devil, Hades, evil, it was uncalculated in comparison, an endless torment for pleasure's sake. It did not justify itself with the reasoning of belittlement. It saw its wrath as a purpose within itself, a job to be complete. Much like those who went along with war atrocities, few revolt when torment seems not only the accepted norm, but a task in need of completion. The body of any institution, even one of punishment, can only function with organs. Durkheim called it functionalism when referring to the structure of society. The functionalism of hell was what had fascinated me. The organs were the indoctrination of the acceptance of torment, not only as normal, but necessary, for that is why this place of horrible anguish exists. Two things emerged my fascination with replicating this torment, and my enlightenment into warped ideas of philosophy. My thoughts are now stitched together by endless references to the discipline. It has allowed me to deepen the interrogation of my own being. It has nurtured a disconnect to the ideas of morality that society informs the budding indoctrination of young minds. Though this was no fault of the thinkers that plagued time and theory, I could only lament their work and deform it to fill the growing container of my metaphysical identity. My first victim was a man, large and intimidating. A gruff face thick with dark stubble, layered knuckles bowed from gorilla-like hands. Physically, I was no match. I knew it, and so did he. For despite an attempt to warn him of his impending doom, he pushed me to the floor and laughed. By now, my ideas of God had transcended one specific doctrine, and for my notion of hell, I based it upon Vyasa and his work, Garuda Purana, a book attributed to Hinduism that documented the punishments inflicted in the realm in immense detail. It was something I could quasi-replicate. I took the man to my realm of hell for 28 days. He died on the 20th. There was no regret that filled me, no clarity that swarmed my fantasy back into sobering reality. And at this point, I knew that there was no hope for a different outcome. I had no intention of hiding what I had done. I did not even consider the law or how I had violated the social contract in place to stop me. My interest lay within my ability to hold such dreadful power over the person of my choosing. In a way, I was not playing God, but Satan. Many a classical dramatization had been made over my sword. Often people attribute it with the all-encompassing new skin of immorality are the work of Satan. It was clear to me that there was no one evil, nor was there one good. If such opposites must exist, then the very spectrum from which they infest would pose defining them a near impossibility. This applied to the ones that circled good, but were not dark enough for evil, the void around sunlight, a no man's land of moral ambiguity. My second victim was the officer who investigated his disappearance. The time spent in my land of torment was much less, and the actions were considerably worse. I imagine if justice in any form truly exists or holds any kind of merit as a byproduct of the hive, I will not live in hell. I would enjoy such a thing too much. Instead, granting me eternal peace in a voidless sunlight would be the only state worthy. The true human stands dropping the shard of glass into a glistening veil of dust. We approach it with malice. As before, my hands wrap themselves around a neck that never won this perfect. Such blasphemous intent penetrates me with a dagger of immorality, and for the first time, I feel the vile nature of my existence. We both wrestle as Jacob had against God in the form of the seraphic, but I know no blessings shall be bestowed once it is over, and I am aware of my opponent. It seizes my pelvis between its forearms and delivers a force that winds me with a resounding crunch. The perfect creature then plunges its pressed fingers like the head of a snake down my gullet, and with an exhale, the parasite splats to the ground. Deformed thing, never holding a shape for long, constantly morphing under the dissolving medication of consciousness. It has lost its vessel in man, but found a new one in all mankind aspires to be. Like a sunflower drunk on an overly generous sun, the parasite rises into the body of perfection. It does not fight for, this was its intention all along. I feel like a fool. I thought I held a key to an important door, but I was nothing more than transportation, moved through imaginary space as I dissected imaginary reality. I am nothing more than a human after all. The parasite now occupies the archetype, a muse to all of humanity, its skin golden and flawless, towering height and divine aura that radiates a blurring of distance indistinguishable from an orange star setting on an absorbing desert. Begins to talk, for now I will hear its origins as I had shared my own. Falling to my knees, I offer my neck, long and fragile. The true human stands over me with its unthinkable glory, begins to recite its inception, beginning with the first words the hive uttered.